We all know the stories, these fairy tales. We were told to them as children how good rose above and conquered evil, defeating witches, vanquishing wolves, escaping evil stepmothers. What they don't tell us is not all of these stories are entirely true. Even in this world, where everything seems perfect, filled with color and light, where evil never wins, there is a place filled with darkness, a place with the true endings to our perfect fairy tales. This place is called the After, filled with the heroes and heroines of our stories, though nothing like depicted. They are in this place to be treated and healed. They are the insane and the broken. They are truly the ever after of happily ever after. They are the endings we were never supposed to know, until now. Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Half Fox Gaming. Today I'm your host Half Pint. I'm going to be taking a step back from the Smite videos and the game theories. Instead, we're going to be doing something I think is a lot more exciting. It's a sneak preview of the upcoming novel that me and Kitsuna have wrote together. We've spent the last 5 years writing this novel. It's just about ready for completion, and this is going to be the first ever sneak preview of the Pinocchio chapter. So sit back, turn up the volume, plug in your earphones, and I hope you all enjoy. That night, Pinocchio was awoken by loud yelling outside the store. He went to his window and saw all of the adults in town outside, and they were all carrying pitchforks and torches and yelling. Pinocchio was scared, so he ran to his dad's room. "Dad, what's going on? What do they want?" Pinocchio asked his father, terrified. "Go to the attic and lock yourself, son. Hide and don't come out unless I tell you to. Do you understand?" Geppetto ordered Pinocchio. "Just remember I love you, Pinocchio. I love you with all my heart. Now go!" Pinocchio listened. He ran up the stairs and locked himself in the attic. After a few minutes he heard a loud crash come from downstairs, followed by screams of witchcraft and evil. Pinocchio ran to the attic window where he used to stare longingly at the people in town, wanting to belong. When he looked out the window this time, however, he watched as they dragged Geppetto out of the store and threw him into the street. What happened next horrified Pinocchio. The townspeople started to hit, kick, and throw stones at his dad. He ran to open the attic door, but Geppetto must have barricaded it from the other side because it wouldn't budge an inch. Dad, get up! Stop! You're gonna kill him!" Pinocchio yelled at the mob through the window, but they couldn't hear him, and they wouldn't have cared if they could. Pinocchio wanted to cry. He wanted to go and save his dad. He knew this was all his fault because he wouldn't listen. He hated every person out there. How could they do this to his dad? Geppetto hadn't been just their friend, but he supplied toys to their kids that they played with every day. He was a good man who kept to himself and had never wronged another person. The villagers stopped their assault, and Pinocchio let out a sigh of relief. It must be over, he thought. But not only was it not over, what happened next will haunt him for the rest of his life. The townspeople tied his dad to a giant wooden stake and started gathering all of his lifeless brothers and sisters and began piling them at his feet. Pinocchio watched horrified as the town that he wanted to be a part of so badly burned his father alive, using his puppets as kindling. Pinocchio forced himself to watch while his father's agonized screams died down as the last of his life left his charred corpse. Pinocchio couldn't believe what had just happened. He had spent his whole life feeling alone, but he had never felt more alone than he had ever before. About 30 minutes had passed with Pinocchio sitting on the chest in the attic, trying to think of what to do. He was numb inside. He didn't feel sad. He felt rage. He allowed that rage to boil over into mania and decided that it's his duty to make these people pay for what they did to him and his dad. They thought he was an evil monster? Oh, he'd show them an evil monster. He broke the attic door down with the hat rack in the room and stomped downstairs to where his late father would whittle his puppets. Pinocchio grabbed the long, razor-sharp whittling knife and went to the back door. He was going to make this town pay the same way they made his father. They were going to pay with their lives. He went to the closest house to the shop and quietly opened the window. Everyone was still outside with Geppetto, so he went upstairs to the parents' room and crawled underneath the bed. He waited patiently for them to come home, kiss their children good night, and go to sleep. Pinocchio had an advantage over Normal people. Normal people needed to move or they'd cramp up. Normal people needed to breathe. Normal people got bored. And Pinocchio, well, he had 15 years of practice hiding from normal people. Sure enough, about an hour later, Pinocchio heard them coming into the bedroom and laying down on the bed. He decided to wait about another 30 minutes to make sure they were asleep. Pinocchio quietly and stealthily slid out from underneath the bed to look upon the face of two of his father's killers. Look at them sleeping peacefully just mere hours after brutally murdering another human being, a father, his father! He decided to take the man out first as he had posed the most resistance. He quietly moved to the other side of the bed, and then he put a wooden hand forcefully across the man's mouth, muffling his screams as Pinocchio very slowly cut deep into his throat, trying to drag out the pain as much as possible. The whittling knife that was so used to cutting wooden puppets cut the man's flesh like butter. The thrashing of her husband woke the wife up. She turned to investigate, and in the dark she saw a 4-foot wooden puppet smothering her husband as he slowly bled to death. She went to let out a scream, but Pinocchio tackled her out of the bed, leaping on top of her chest and grabbing 2 handfuls of hair. He began slamming her head against the hardwood floor over and over and over until he heard her fragile skull crack. Pinocchio walked out of the door covered in blood, leaving the wife slowly dying on the floor with her wide eyes staring at the bloody doll left to find his next victims. He decided to go back to his father's workshop and get some tools for his little adventure tonight. Pinocchio was going to have fun with the townsfolk. For the first time in 15 years, he was going to introduce himself. The second house was a single man, so Pinocchio didn't have to worry about waking anyone. He picked the lock on the back door and quietly slipped inside. He decided to play with this one a little bit, so he just stood in the hallway still as a statue, staring with his blood-splattered blue eyes at the man sitting at his kitchen table. The man saw him out of the corner of his eye and quickly turned to face the hallway, but Pinocchio had already ducked into the next bedroom. The man shook his head. He must be seeing things, he thought. All of a sudden, he heard small feet thumping on the floor very quickly, causing him to jolt up out of his chair, knocking it over in the process. He frantically looked around his house. His heart was pounding as he began to sweat profusely. Thump, 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 went the footsteps, again, hard enough to be heard, but not hard enough to tell the origin. At first they were down the hallway in front of him, then he heard them to his left, his right, upstairs, above him. The man was extremely frightened now. As his paranoid mind raced, he heard a sound that made his blood run cold and his knees weak. A child's giggle came from the room to his left. He slowly went to the table next to his china cabinet and grabbed the revolver he stashed inside for emergencies. He started cautiously walking towards the room when the giggle came from the room behind him. He spun around with the revolver raised, but the room was empty. His mind was racing now, his breathing 1,000 miles a second. His heart made his breathing seem slow. He was just as panicked as Pinocchio wanted him. Thump, 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 giggle, thump, 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 giggle. The sounds continued. He stared over into the kitchen, down the revolver for what seemed like an eternity, waiting for any kind of movement, when he heard a giggle from the bathroom down the narrow hallway. As he slowly approached the bathroom, whose light has been turned on. As Pinocchio grew closer, he seized his chance, swinging a baseball bat at the man's left knee as he walked past Pinocchio's hiding place. The man's knee made a very satisfying crack as the kneecap broke, sending the man crashing to the ground in tears, dropping his gun as he did. To the man's anguished horror, Pinocchio climbed on top of him, splattered in blood and smiling. "Hi there, sir. My name's Pinocchio. Are you scared? Are you afraid you're gonna die?" Pinocchio taunted in a little child's voice. "You didn't think twice about killing my dad. You should have considered the consequences. You see, I'm not the monster. I'm normal. You, sir? You're the monster. So I'll ask again. Are you scared? 'Cause you should be." The man tried to focus on what he was seeing through the tears brought by his shattered knee. As soon as his eyes had focused, he wished they hadn't. Pinocchio raised his arms over his head and quickly brought his father's electric sander down on the man's face. He held it there as the man kicked and screamed while the electric sander quickly removed the flesh off his face. Pinocchio kept grinding until he reached the bone, and then he stood up to leave. As he turned towards the front door, the man was able to muster a painful gurgle. Pinocchio, realizing the man was still alive, grabbed the revolver on the ground and shot his other knee, leaving him to die a slow and painful death in the hallway. Pinocchio wasted no time getting to his next victims. They were the couple who had tied his father to the stake. They were outside feeding their hogs and cutting up wood for the nighttime fire when Pinocchio arrived. He quietly snuck up behind the husband and slashed the back of his knees with the bloody whittling knife, severing the tendons in his leg and sending him collapsing to the ground in screaming agony. He quickly grabbed the man and threw him into the running wood chipper, holding his feet to drag it out. The man instinctively put his hands out in front of him, causing the whirling blades to pulverize his fingers first. He kicked and screamed as Pinocchio slowly lowered him in, inch by agonizing inch. Blood sprayed like a fountain along with pieces of flesh and bones. The wife screamed at the sight of the puppet grinding up her husband and tried to run for help, but Pinocchio had no plans of letting her escape her punishment. He dropped the rest of the man into the wood chipper as he picked up the pitchfork on the ground and threw it at the fleeing woman. Pinocchio's aim was true as the pitchfork hit her dead center in her back, causing her to scream in pain and fall to the ground. He slowly walked up to her as she tried to crawl away, leaving a trail of blood behind her. He whistled a happy tune as he grabbed her hair and began dragging her back towards the hog pen. The nice thing about hogs is they'll eat anything if they smell blood. He lifted her head above the trough and made a quick, small incision in her neck, draining her blood slowly into the trough. The hogs, now smelling the blood, were in a frenzy, just as Pinocchio had planned. He threw her into the trough and watched as the hog's teeth tore at her flesh and muscle, easily separating it from the bone. He threw his head back and laughed as her screams filled the air. Pinocchio smiled as he walked away from her as her screams subsided. For the first time in a long time, he was truly having fun. He grabbed his baseball bat and decided it was time to make the instigators pay, the ones who convinced the towns he was evil. Goldilocks's. Alright everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's sneak preview of Pinocchio's chapter. If you did, by all means, give it a like, leave a comment down in the towel section down below, and I look forward to hearing from you guys. Your guys' feedback is definitely welcome. Look for the book, hopefully coming to shelves by the end of the year. You guys all have a great day, and as always, keep gaming.